and Facebook is online.
Checking out the stream and waiting for friends to say hello.
I mean, enemies can say hello too, right? We're not picky. If you're gonna watch.
I don't know. We hear from them all the time, honestly.
Yes, but this is an opportunity to communicate with them.
Ooh,
In my opinion, a large number of my and any group in the industry's detractors, anyone who spends time attacking Paizo and Green Ronin and Wizards of the Coast, I mean, there are legit issues that you can get into, but a large percentage of them are people that if we could sit down and have a conversation with and have an exchange of ideas, we could move closer to. So I actually welcome my enemies to communicate with me. I don't let them be abusive, but communication can be a path towards understanding and togetherness.
I love it. Hey, everyone, you're listening to the pre-game discussion about should enemies be allowed to chat with us. And so far, we are split evenly down the middle because I say nay. And Owen's such a nice guy. He says yay. But I want to say bonjour.
You don't say nay, Troy. You just require, as the gatekeeper to the talent at Green Ronin communication, you require people not make us cry.
That is true. And if you do, I will come find you.
Yeah.
I will come to your house. Jacob, good to see you, my friend. Good to see Nicholas Morrow is rolling in. We've got Rain is hanging out over on the, they call it the YouTubes. Hanging out on.
Is YouTube actually broadcasting yet?
I believe, yeah. Rain, I can see a chat. Do you see me, Rain? Because Rain says, yay, hello. But yeah, so over on the Facebooks, before we kick it, I'm showing that we are connected. I just need to, you don't see us, Rain, you just see the ThursdAGE countdown. Liz Courts is here. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Liz.
Oh yeah,
yeah, super big fan. Sounds like
great.
Owen is well on his way to that envoy class. Yes, that's right, Rain. You know what, Rain? Serious points for you. We will not forget this. Yes. Okay. Great. So yeah, Rain is seeing all the goods. I didn't know that Nicholas Morrow is from California. Brian F. Irving is here. Says hello. If you are just joining us, say hi. We're gonna transition here in just a minute. You missed a rousing debate as we were preparing on whether or not our enemies should be able to speak, and let us know what you think. Unless you're our enemy, and you can cork it. Owen, are you feeling like we should get going?
Yes, let's get going.
All right,
let's
ready? Here it comes. Hello, everybody. It is time for ThursdAGE with Owen Casey Stevens, lead developer for Fantasy Age. I am the disembodied voice of Troy, and I say unto you, hello and good day. And
hi, folks.
Can you all hear and see and feel? Yay, we see Owen. Owen, how are you today?
I'm pretty good, all things considered.
Yeah.
I have been telling people, I've been borrowing the John Kovalic term pandemic fine.
Yes.
Obviously, there are vast, significant, ongoing problems around the world, but they're not things that I'm going to try and fix in an hour on a tabletop RPG broadcast. So
we could do it if we tried.
I'm doing good.
Fantastic. And yeah, folks, as you, today is our feedback episode. And we have had, Owen, can I tell you something special about this playtest that we're doing?
If I said no, would I stop you?
No, it would not. It would not stop me.
So let's say yes.
Okay. Then, yes, it is. Thank you so much. But yeah, our playtesters are amazing. I have run like I want to say for massively multiplayer online games, and we're talking playtests of tens to hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah.
There is some. There's a distinct difference between people who play online video games and people who tabletop role play, although video games do get their the genesis really is tabletop roleplay, I believe. I mean, like some of the RPGs and things. And there's some differences. I love both communities, but the tabletop roleplay community, I think that because it requires a little more energy from the player, from the people who are playing. They've got to do some research and put together their point scores, all that jazz. There's a little more prep. That they're more conscientious about their feedback. It is solid. I mean, it is just 100% some good stuff. Real quick, do you want to talk a bit about like how do you prefer to see feedback, and how does it sort of enter into your process as the developer?
So I talked a little. I wrote a forward to the playtest so that people could get information on what I'm looking for and what I'm looking at, etc. So here's to me the most important thing about playtest feedback. Are you having fun? And I know that sounds super basic and obvious, but here's one of the things that can happen, not only in a role-playing game in general, but also within a specific role-playing game community. It is perfectly possible for a game designer to get very much in their head with, well, I see that this is just an example, but I see that there's a gap in the advancement of the number of rounds it takes for you to take down an average enemy between level 7 and level 9. So obviously, since I see that mathematical problem, I need to fix it. So I'll figure out what the problems are. Okay, well, the simplest solution is to say at level 7, you get to add an amount of damage equal to the difference between your character's level and the level of the opponent you're facing, divided by the number of targets that are available, so that the number of rounds of combat will be reduced down to our expected range. And if that's fun, that's great. But sometimes we as designers come up with solutions to problems that aren't bothering anyone or aren't bothering anyone within our community.
Yeah,
right?
True.
Or we come up with solutions that are worse than the problem, right? It's perfectly reasonable for someone to say, hey, I've noticed between levels 7 and 9, fights take a little longer than they do either before that or after that. But this new solution slows everything down and it's weird and it only applies between these levels and I hate it. So the very first thing I want to know is the game overall still fun for you? And then secondly, if you're familiar with the previous edition, the basic rulebook in this case, are the changes fun for you? After that, it's things like clarity. Do the rules make sense? How much do they slow it down? Do they do what you expect the rules to do? One of the things that can be true when you're trying to simplify things is that you can unintentionally make things secret because you don't want to bury people with information too early. So for example, in Fantasy Age, we have focuses, and we introduce the focuses in the basic rule book very basically for good and obvious reasons. We want people to just pick some stuff, go and play. And you're not supposed to need to have any one focus to be able to have a fun, effective character. But that can mean if we've got a focus that's like, constitution, durability or something, or strength might, and we don't tell you how that's used, and then we start using it in a specific way, it might be, if we're saying, hey, strength might is if you're trying to break a door open or bend bars or lift gates, if you want to get old school. And if we never tell you that, there are two potential problems. First, you might be thinking to yourself, I want to be a very, very strong character. I don't know what the heck might is. These other strength-based focuses make sense to me, so I will take them. And then you are specifically not being good at the stuff that you wanted to be good at because we haven't told you what that means. The other potential problem, and this becomes an even bigger problem if a game becomes popular and expands beyond a core set of designers, is if we haven't explicitly said how rules work, what does strength might as a focus mean, then other designers might start using it in a different way. And then it's not just a secret anymore. It has become, in fact, a lie. So clarity, do you know what these things mean? Do we present the rules to you in a good time frame, in a good way? Do we over reference them? Do we explain them too often? there are things that are so important that you want to present that information more than once, or that you want to present it once for players and once for GM, saying, hey, here's this thing, and here are two different takes on that thing. So those are my biggest playtest issues. Then you get to emergent behavior, things that are occurring in the game that are not obvious just from a read of the rules, that only occur when people are actually using all this at the table, and human interaction comes in with this set of rules and produces something. Like if someone says, hey, I really love the idea of specializations, I like a lot of these specializations, but I had a very strong character concept that to me makes sense for a warrior in Fantasy Age. And when I got to my first specialization, there weren't any I was interested in that I qualified for. The prerequisites are so high that while I could potentially have met those prerequisites, I've gone a different direction, or if you're using dice, the die roll didn't go well enough. And so I can't take those options, and suddenly I am locked out of that set of fun. Or I've talked about stunts, right? That stunt points can be a case where I think stunts are super neat. I like the primary mechanism for generating them, where it's a little random, you get a different number, and that helps break up the tactical flow of any situation. But it means that you can have a character who has the normal balance of success and failure, who is locked out from stunts because you never get a successful roll when you happen to roll doubles. So that's a place where if someone says, hey, I've noticed that every time we are making spellcasters, someone takes the Fate Arcana because the ability to manipulate rolls is so much more useful than anything else. Or, hey, I've noticed that the Lightning Arcana is cool, but it is very difficult to get a lot of utility out of the spells because they're hard to pull off. I frequently fail my check to successfully cast the spell, and then my round is wasted. And yes, a warrior can waste a round by missing an attack, but I have a limited resource, and if my turn is both spent expending a resource and not having any effect, that's not fun for me. Those are the things that can be very difficult from just a read through to determine what's actually going to happen. And in all of these cases, when we're talking about an existing rule set, we want to know, what does the community, what do our current customers like? A business case can sometimes be made for, hey, we've sold everything we can to this base of customers. We would rather have new customers be attracted, and we're going to solve these problems so that we can bring in new customers. I am personally very firmly of the opinion with Fantasy Age that we have a really solid rules base and a really solid customer base. And for both of those things, what we want to do is advance and improve. So I don't want to do something in this game that causes current players to go, yeah, okay, this game isn't for me anymore.
Yeah.
Not every role-playing game is designed for every group of players, right? There's a huge difference between playing Rollmaster, which I have played and enjoyed, and playing Fudge, which I have played and enjoyed. But I've run into, and I understand people that like one and for that same reasons don't like the other. And as a result, when you're talking about evolving a game, you want to make sure that you're evolving it, not mutating it into something new that none of the old fans like.
So interesting, and the relationship between developer and consumer can be fraught, and you spoke to a bit of that. I remember, I won't say which studio, but I was, working with a dev team, and the engineer, the programmer said, "Oh, I mean, this would be so much. I mean, this would be so much easier if it weren't for the player." And I'm like, wait, what? It was hilarious, primarily because they're the only reason why we're here, Yeah. And I said as much, and he kind of looked at me and was sort of, and then he started laughing, and honestly, it was that he was just exhausted. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of stuff going on, but what's exciting about this stuff is, I look at the way that the Green Ronin community has matured over time, because, geez, this is our 21st year of doing biz, which is wild because I'm only 21 years old. And yeah. Of
course you are.
Yeah. Disembodied. I don't have to worry about wrinkles or any of that old stuff.
That's fair.
Yeah. But
you certainly leave less video evidence that we can use to contradict your claim.
True that. There's enough crappy video of me on the internet. Feel free to do a search. But the stuff that that this community hasn't necessarily developed is that gatekeepy feel. Not to say there isn't a couple, but we're really, we've done that part of it right, and that collaboration with the community is really strong. But I asked a question in chat. I want to say hello to Alex. Alex says, "Hey, Owen." Rain says, "Troy, the 7-year-old AI." Yes. Intelligence questionable. Artificial or not. Let's see. So what I wanted to know is, because of that two-way street, I wanted to kind of figure out what people who were testing a product, what kind of feedback they wanted to get back from the developer. And I think that can be an interesting thing, because sometimes it's about, they call it economy of scale. Like, you can't talk to every single individual. You can certainly try, or you can certainly try to speak to the various folks that are connected with your game, or the product that you're making. But Brian Irving says, interesting question. I'm not sure I am expecting any response, although it is useful to know they got feedback. But beyond that, whatever response they offer is fine. It's almost as though people have been maybe trained a bit to understand we can't reply to every single person. But we'll, as long as they know that we've received that information. And it looks like, generally speaking, people are not expecting a lot of feedback from developers. And I think that, for me, I think that people who are consuming a particular product, they also want to know what we're looking for. And I think we've been fairly clear about that, right? Do you feel?
I do. I think, especially with people that have actually, sent the email to letsplay@greenronin.com and gotten the packet have gotten into play testing. But the expectation versus the possibility is really interesting when it comes to discussions with game developers. At one point, the only way that you could have a conversation with a game developer was to go to some place or event where they were present, right? So I went to Gen Con a whole bunch back when that was safe. And they're not physically holding it last year, so that's great. So that I could be in a seminar room early on in my career and listen to game designers and game developers and game publishers and producers.
Yeah.
And when they would say, "Hey, does anyone have any question?" I could then raise my hand and ask a question. And that was my opportunity. And that involved, 17 hours of driving each way and hundreds of dollars spent in rooms and food, etc. I got really lucky early in my career, because since I was living in Oklahoma, I was really close to Steve Jackson Games. And so I could frequently drive to some place that Steve Jackson was having seminars, or Aaron Alston was present at seminars. And so I did that. And then later in my career, I would go to conventions so I could be the person up sitting in the seminar table answering questions. But that was still, there was a barrier there. People had to physically show up at that thing. And I remember in 2000, Wizards of the Coast, we were having a conversation about Gen Con coverage back when I worked there. And there was this desire to do live video over the internet of all the seminars. And the response from the tech team at the time was, the reason there's a difference between the internet and television is that internet does not have the bandwidth to do interactive live video of seminars. And that's just not true anymore. Now we're 2 decades later, but the barrier for developers who want to and have a producer who will help, because I've tried this myself, but I'm not nearly as good at it without someone, putting pretty things in the background and making announcements and reading the comments and receiving them while I'm doing this. But the barrier for developers to get, that's you. That's a compliment. The barrier for developers to get in front of a group of people and say, "Hey, all you have to do is clear out some time and sit here and type a question, and there's a chance we'll be able to get to you." That barrier is much lower. And some of those changes are just recent, and some of them have been driven by the fact that for the past year, we haven't been able to get together physically and do things. And I think that there are advantages to this system. And I think this helps build a community, right?
Yeah.
And even though not everyone can be free at the time we're doing this, anytime we pick, someone would not be free to do it. We do then have the secondary mechanism that, hey, these videos are archived, they're put up on YouTube. We give you an opportunity to write in with questions. So I have lots, I mean, I've got mobility issues. I've got lots of friends who have mobility issues and social anxiety issues and financial issues that prevent them from being able to go someplace or depend on this day, on this time, I am free. But we have created a system that has fewer barriers to entry, right? You can, if you want to, go to your library, look this up, get a free email account and send in a question. And that's work, but it's not as much work as driving to Indianapolis, unless you happen to live in Indianapolis. So I think it is important that when we're building a community and we're talking about feedback and we're talking about a playtest, we remember what can be done now and not be too hidebound to the way we have done things. And that means sometimes we'll have technical issues because we're trying things for the first time or the second time, or we just haven't done it enough to be perfect at it. But things are changing so fast. I love the fact that someone can just type Troy an email and say, hey, I've got a question. What about this thing? And we've got a chance to respond to that. And then we're not just talking to that one person. We're talking to everyone who had that question who didn't take the time to send it in. Or if 5 people sent in similar questions, right, we can compile those and answer them. So I am super excited about being able to say, we are trying to make a game book that is the same game. We're not trying to change editions, but we want it to be better and improved, more accessible, more fun, less gatekeepy. And we want you to tell us how we're doing, which is why we're giving this opportunity to look at us and give it feedback now.
Exactly. So something too that I want to get into is there are moments in all of these opportunities to test that that for me stick out when I get a real sense of the kinds of people that I'm dealing with. You know, it's one of those, you know, you've got 1,000 things going on in a day, and it can be a little tough to connect because there's so many different people to talk to and different moving parts and all of that. One of the things that we've done, sorry, I was just reading the chat, but one of the things that we have done is connected with some friends in Spain. They're Spaniards. And I do believe our buddy is here. The person specifically that I'm talking about is Gerardo. Gerardo, tell me you are listening, because I want to call something out here that I feel is it's indicative of the kinds of things that we're dealing with. I got the Hi, Gerardo. Gerardo got a bunch of friends together over there in Spain. Also, Gerardo has invited us to come and live in Spain, where we can just lounge about. And you know, I'm trying to think of some delicious, you know, dishes. Like, what's a good beach dish? Like
Any dish is a good beach dish because beaches are good.
That's true. This pal of ours put together a spreadsheet of the experience, and I shared. Did you get a chance to peep at that? I know that we've been sort of.
I received it and cracked it open and saw that I had it, and have not had a chance to analyze it, which it deserves some analysis.
It does indeed, and not a problem, because you know, it's beautiful, and I'm actually, what you can kind of hear me sort of like kind of digging around in the background here as I'm looking to share that. I'll share that in a moment. But it is, you know, I want to thank Gerardo, because Gerardo, paella. Oh, that's so good. Paella, that is really the way to go. Thank you both to Gerard and, you know, both for sharing some of that feedback, but also for sharing, you know, paella. That's a great idea. I haven't yet to eat today. I accidentally ate a bunch of cookies, which is a theme for me. I should probably stop buying cookies, Owen. Let's see here real quickly. Liz Court said something that I want to touch on. Owen, for you, what is more influential to you if you were to weigh these two ideas, qualitative versus quantitative feedback. Which one do you feel is it kind of that it influences you? And that's okay. It's more of a personality test than anything else.
So I think they are both important. And one of the weird things about writing a tabletop role-playing game is that what we are doing is writing a technical manual for a game that involves spontaneous innovation, right? So it's creative writing, technical manual creation terms. And that means that there are these important balances, right? So a lot of people read role-playing game books for enjoyment. And when a role-playing game book gets of about 8 pages, it needs to be fun to read or no one will bother. So even if we're not saying, hey, we're making this for readers, even if we're making it for players and gamers, we need it to be fun to read. And that can bring some very wibbly wobbly subjective opinions of what good and what bad. And at the same time, if we say in one place that there's a brawling specialty and it's under strength, and in a different place there's a brawling specialty and it's under fighting, we have objectively created confusion, and either it's in 2 places and it's the only focus that's in 2 places, which is weird, and I mean focus, not specialty, or we've made a mistake, and that is a hard, definite piece of feedback that we can take and look into. So for me, it's less about the type of feedback and the amount of impact it has on the ability to play the game, A, in a fun way, and B, the way we intended. And I would rather you play it in a fun way than the way we intended if those disagree with each other. But in my experience, it is better for us to be very clear about what we're doing. And then if you want to make a change, we have given you this hard framework to make a change from.
Yeah.
So even if you decided you wanted it to be different, it is better for us to have clear rules so that you've got a clear thing that you are changing.
That makes sense. And I want to, oh my goodness, what happened here?
You put up the spreadsheet. I think.
did. I put it up in place of your face, which was not meant
Well,
to happen.
while you're looking at that, I'm going to cover a couple of questions from the stream.
Yeah.
So I may be about to butcher this name, and I apologize, but it's Stefan or Stefane Gutschtoft, I think. But
our French.
I
That's our
apologize.
French friend.
Okay, if I mangled that name, I apologize. Asks, do you think it could be interesting to develop more campaigns and standalone adventures for Fantasy Age to bring more players to the system? Like gaming console manufacturers, that's the video games which make the gamers buying the console. So developing campaign and adventures may be a good strategy to bring more players to use this nice system. That is a very succinct boil down of a huge question. And my answer is yes, I think that's smart. And we will have things to announce in the future about standalone adventures and about campaign settings where we want to be able to say, please come enjoy what we're doing, take a look at this game. Here is a new bolt-on campaign setting we've created so that you can use this game in this new setting, or borrow things from the setting to make your own game. So that's absolutely something we're looking at. I think it's a great idea and important. Joe Nolan asked, how do you feel about members of the community creating YouTube video tutorials for Age? There's a non-Hasbro approved video series, and I want to do one for Age. This could reduce the barrier to entry. So we already have Titan's Grave for Fantasy Age, which was professionally done, a whole season of a show, and Green Ronin was right there helping with it. That does not mean we don't want more. So anyone that wants to do something like that, I love the idea. There are absolutely good ways to do it. We are supportive of that concept. Please drop an email to let's play at greenronin.com.
Yes.
So that we can work with you and make that happen, because I think those things are great. And I think there are ways we can help and work together, lower the barrier entry, increase visibility, point at each other so that people are seeing back and forth.
Right.
I think that's great.
Hey, I wanted to add to that. We are going all in on supporting streamers and supporting. So for instance, if say somebody wanted to put together a system, what we would want to do is see how we can support you, whether that's with some artwork for that stream that you're putting together, whether it is if you're doing it, like for instance, if you're going to do some of that and let's say you're going to live stream it on Twitch, we have a resource we'll show you on our channel. We'll let people know that you're doing the thing. And in addition, there was another, I believe it was our French friend, and correct me if I am, it was either let me double check here. So basically, the question was, and remind me in chat who you were because everybody's chatting, which is awesome. They wanted to know about like getting more adventures and more things out there, and we're along with this. We're working with our community of creators, and we're going to be doing a content program which will allow developers to create encounters for Fantasy Age, and we'd like to, kind of roll that out pretty soon. We wanted to get sort of a feel from the testers if who are in the midst of creating a thing, whether or not anything disrupted or they may want to change something based on what they've learned. And what I've learned is that people really enjoy it, and it isn't super disruptive to somebody who's already created, say, an encounter that's lengthy. But you want to talk a little bit about the Creators Alliance?
So we just had pop up from on Facebook, Terry Advent. Are you going to have a third-party open license for the Age system?
Well, there you go.
And that links straight into this. So this is one of those nuanced situations. The technical answer to are we going to have a third-party open license for the Age system is no. We are not going to do something like the open game license.
No, yeah.
And the fact of the matter is that the open game license is tied very, very closely to my career. And unlike some people in the industry, I am a huge fan of the open game license, but I am also aware of the amount of effort it takes to put together something like a system resource document, which is the original boiled down D20 version of the 3rd edition D&D rules.
Real quick, did you say oiled?
Boiled.
Oh, boiled. I
down.
was like, okay, I'm not familiar with...
Reduced to its minimum.
Gotcha.
The point is that in order for an open
lubricated.
game system to work well, you have to put a lot of time and effort into saying this is open, this is not, or you're giving your entire product away, which is not what we want to do. We are currently going a different route with Age, and that's the Creators Alliance that Troy referred to. We are working on a program where it will be possible for people to even take some assets we have, put them together in various ways, and create products which we may even be able to point at and promote, specifically on drive-through the same way, for example, the Dungeon Masters Guild does, so that there will be a specific place in a specific community where people will be able to put things together, and that is where people will be able to access a lot of Age content for creating their own stuff. And we've already got people on board, and we're putting it together, and I'm super excited about it. It's not ready yet, and one of the things that has delayed it is that we were aware, as we were doing this, that we were beginning to work on this core rulebook. And I don't want to go into a great deal of history on why Green Ronin kind of wrinkles its nose anytime you say the number 3.5. But it's a real pain as someone working with someone else's game system if you are about to release a product for one version of a game, and just before or just after you do, a new version of that game comes out. And
Right.
even with 100% compatibility, which is what we're shooting for, that means that there are toys in our toy box that we're adding.
Right.
It's the same game we want to play, but there are new toys in that toy box, and we want everyone to have access to them. So those people were informed early that we're working on this core rulebook. They've got the opportunity to play test. They are super invested people.
Yeah.
And we're really excited to see what they're going to do. That's where we're going instead of an open license.
So let me... go ahead.
There are lots of reasons for that, but one of them is that we want to work with this community to launch and say, these are the products we're looking at. This is the sort of thing we want you to do. Rather than have the Age version of, for example, the D20 Glut, which I think did damage the brand and people's interaction with it to a certain extent.
Yeah. And as somebody who is relatively new to the particulars of the tabletop role play industry, that OGL has always sort of confounded me, but we can talk about that on another stream. I want to tell everybody who is...
Someday we'll spend a whole hour with me defending the OGL to you.
Yeah, yes. I would love to hear that. But I want to tell everybody who is listening right now, if you are listening and watching, if you are interested, I will, because you are a friend, we'll talk about, send an email to let's play at greenronin.com. And there are a few people here that said creators alliance reporting for duty, and this is what I want, and I'm there, and yes, when, if you are ready to design your own encounter that you would like to, include some of the information that you're learning in the playtest, understanding that some of that may change. Let's talk. Let's talk. Send me an email and let's do that. And Liz Court said, "Ooh, can I join the OGL discussion?" You know what? I would love a Liz on this program. I've actually talked with Liz on another program.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, Troy. If we're going to do an OGL program and Liz is available, what we ought to do is have an OGL show with Liz, and I'll join her rather than have her join me. We can both be there, but it'll be the OGL with Liz Courts. I have sat in seminars to listen to Liz Courts talk about the OGL, right? Liz was in charge of keeping track of OGL compliance for Paizo for many years. So she knows way more about this topic than I do. And if she is volunteering to be on our show, we should absolutely make that happen at her convenience.
Liz Courts, I'm learning new things about you every single day. And if you
Liz, I know that Liz just looks like a brilliant artist and graphic designer, and writer and editor and layout person, but she also knows a great deal about the legal niceties.
That is great. Primarily because we don't know anything about legal stuff or niceties.
You know plenty about niceties, Troy.
I think so. I think the mimicry is sort of finally set. But yeah, so yeah, I would love to do that. And Liz Courts, if you would have me, I would be happy to be your disembodied voice, and we can put something together where it is us sort of having a dialogue, maybe independent of ThursdAGE.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe it's deserving of its own
stream,
topic, and Liz is an expert.
That is excellent. And I'm happy to, as I often am, be the dum-dum. Super good at that. Liz is a genius, says Crystal Fraser. That is I like Gerardo says, I'm interested in creating things based on age. It's my current lifestyle. I like that. We should make a t-shirt. Do you know the age lifestyle? And
so,
go ahead.
Rain LeBeau said something earlier that I want to touch on about feedback, because it's a piece of feedback.
Yes, please.
She says, one of the only things I'm concerned about after reading the playtest is that heroes will have an impressive number of talents compared to the basic rule book. It gives you lots of powers up front, which I think is fun, but that can make the heroes become very complicated creatures at later levels when you have a total of 21 to 23 talent ranks. That is not incorrect. I personally think that adding the talents, a few talents up front, and having a regular flow of what you can and can't do with talents, and having added the option to double focus in something, reduces the complexity some while increasing the ability to make exactly the character you want. But this is one of those places where that's my opinion. And I mentioned earlier in the stream, I enjoyed playing Rollmaster. So my ability to accept increased complexity may be greater than the baseline or the mean for the fantasy age community. And that's one of the places where I would love people to come in, because if they tell me, okay, this is nice, but it's too much. This is just too much. By the time I get to an 18th level character, I can't play them. In general, my theory is that the complexity ramps along with your experience with both your character and the system. So if you are just handed an 18th level fantasy age character, that may be a bit much. In my personal experience, everyone I have playtested with and gamed with, if we start them at second or third level and we build up as they go along, they get so familiar with what my character can do and how I interact with the rules that by the time they're 18th level, it is not in fact too complex. It is only an interesting level of choices I now have. But if there was a strong pushback on that from the playtest community, that would absolutely be something we would look at to see what can we do to take this down, to reduce it, or to the very least to say, here is an option to have less complexity without having less effectiveness. So that is exactly the sort of thing, and it specifically says, when reading it, I have this concern, and I get that. And that is one of the reasons why I want people to get in there and play games and tell me when you played them, and when you played them, maybe you take a character and play them at not every level, obviously, because you only have so much time. But if you played them at 4th, 8th, 12th, 16th, right? Just a few, even 1 or 2 encounters per, at that point, did things feel too complex for you to have fun, or having played them at 4th and then having to add a little at 8th and a little at 12th, were you comfortable and familiar enough with it for it to work? So that's a perfect example of the kind of feedback that we're looking for and looking at, and then I want to hear from people.
I love it. Yeah. Brian Irving adds, I must admit that reading it, I had a moment when I worried about rules bloating, but by the time I ran a game, that concern vanished, which is good to hear. Rain over on our YouTube says, my household played a lot of Pathfinder, so we have a fairly high threshold for complexity, so we may be biased as well. That's interesting. Liz Court says, yeah, there's a lot of nuance gained from gaining levels gradually. And then Terry Advent says, complexity of characters, the drawback is that it makes NPC creation a little more complex and longer. Do we want to talk about that?
So NPCs in Age do not have to be built using the same rules as players. They can be, but they don't have to be. And I certainly hope when the core rulebook comes out, we will have put together some notes on saying, hey, here's how you can have a monster or a creature or an NPC that can do what you want them to do at a given level of gameplay without having to spend a few hours building them. The other thing that can help with that sort of thing are some shorthand notes, right? We can put together and say, hey, if you want a major threat or a legendary threat for a warrior, you don't have to build a 20th level warrior. You can say, okay, all their primary abilities are this number, all their secondary are this number, take this, this, and this. And even though you might have more little things, if you are a player character running that character, you don't need that necessarily as a GM, as an NPC. And players, in my experience, tend to do things like, hey, we had this whole adventure where we were defending a brewery and my character liked the brewer and I got involved in brewing and now I want to take a focus in brewing. Even if that doesn't really impact the effectiveness of their character, a lot of players have fun saying, I am now really good at this thing. That might be out of combat, only in social situations, whatever. And those are sort of the little side trips in character design that you don't have to do for an NPC, or you can just bolt on later if it comes up. So I do think creating NPCs needs to be relatively fast and streamlined. Obviously, if you look at the Starfinder role-playing game, that as a design team, and I was only one person in it, we decided that you needed to be able to make NPCs and monsters faster and easier than the same number of player characters. I think that same logic can be applied to Age reasonably well and reasonably easily, and that is something that I'm looking into. And all of that said, another thing that you can really do well in something like a community program, if you wanted to be part of the Creators Alliance, is you could make a big book of NPCs, right? That thing can take time, but then if you say, hey, here's a bunch of insignificant threats, and here are minor threats, and here are moderate threats, and we've got, 2 different versions of all 4 classes, and here's some art to go with it, so that you can just say, okay, I need a grizzled veteran guard. I like this art of this dwarven woman as a grizzled veteran guard. I will put that in the book and you're done. I think that can help. That is exactly the sort of thing that the community can do. That can help GMs have what they wanted moving forward without having to necessarily do all that work themselves.
Question for the chat. If you were to create or magic up in your mind a perfect sort of addendum, information that you could get from the Age Creators Alliance, what would you want that thing to be? What is the thing that drives you crazy? Is it about, generating the perfect, encounter beast? Is it about creating, as Owen said, this information that you can just have NPCs that are at your fingertips? It really does sound amazing. And Owen, that is some solid professional advice for designers. We're doing this for free. That is amazing. Liz Court says, that was one of the first products that I thought of. And then Liz Court says, and now you're going to be sued. Uh-oh. Well, that was in a private message from her attorney. But here's something that's interesting. Gerardo, our friend, our Spaniard friend, says, I'm running a campaign which is now 3 years old. My players are level 18 at the moment. I think the system works very well at high levels, but I'm curious about how it'll play at high levels with the new rules.
So are we. Um, there are some potential issues with high level play. One of the things that we've noticed is that frequently the right people succeed in an encounter, but it can become a grind. And I'm not just talking about combat, right? Even with exploration and chases and things like that, there are some rules where like, okay, you're going to succeed, but we have to do this same thing to succeed 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. So we have tried to adjust high level play so that those encounters don't take way longer than the amount of fun they generate. I don't have a problem with an encounter taking time if it continues to be interesting and new things happen, and it's designed to eat up that amount of cognitive load from the players, right? This is the evening.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't want to say, okay, you're jumped by, at first level, you're jumped by bandits. It takes 5 rounds. You kill them. Great. At 18th level, if you are jumped by the bandit king and his 3 and 4 lieutenants who are you're about to end banditry throughout the forest of misty darkness, I don't want that. If it's supposed to be the same cognitive load, I don't want that to take 30 rounds in order to get it done.
Right.
Even if you got the same chance of success. Now, if it turns out that instead of the bandit king, you are facing the Queen of Graves, and she and her catacomb mountains are the ultimate threat of the campaign, maybe that should take longer. But there are ways we can do that without making you grind through every interesting potential encounter. There are also, we've got rules for exploration and rules for social encounters, and those can also end up having a disproportionate weight to their importance.
Crystal Fraser shares, I used to date a girl named Misty Darkness.
I am not in the least bit surprised that you dated a girl named Misty Darkness.
Did you hear my my joke about the Seattle-based disc jockey, sort of a talk radio host? They have a superpower where they can get like diamond-like sort of skin, and the talk show host, it's a therapy. You call in and you talk to this therapist, and he's in Seattle even, and really enjoys coffee and tossed salad and scrambled eggs. But it's the name of that particular hero is Crystal Fraser. Get it?
Uh-huh.
Owen's like, I don't think it's funny.
No. I know what happens if you poke Crystal Fraser too often,
yes.
And I will miss you, Troy.
And this is like the 3rd time I've tried this, and I know I'm going to get it. So the chat is just filled. It's alive. The chat is alive with the sound of musings, as I like to say, and they are talking about non-combat encounters to kind of help make them more intricate. They're talking about puzzles. They're talking about, so I mean, those are some really great addendums. Crystal's like, you're not funny. Let's see. I think that there are a lot of Thank you, Rain. Rain says the payoff was not worth the buildup. But here I am, if not to, amuse, then to take up vital time in your life. So that when you're done, you're like, okay, thanks. I will never get that time back. And you won't. So for you, Owen, in sort of the most basic sense, when people are giving you feedback and they want to hit the sweet spot, and they don't want to give too much or too little, or what should you kind of talk to how they should plate that for you? What's the best way to absorb that information? More mechanical housekeeping stuff.
So, I mean, we're going to send out a survey before too long, which will ask some specific questions, and it'll have a little format information on it. But as the developer, when you are giving me playtest feedback, the most useful things to include in that, first of all, is what is the circumstance under which this feedback developed? So are you just reading the book and you notice something? Did it come up in play? Did it come up in play once, or is it consistently coming up in play? If it's something like we are finding 12th level characters too difficult, did you start with 12th level characters, or have you worked them up to 12th level? So just tell me what's going on, how many players, because if the feedback is, hey, the fights take too long, me and my 14 players keep beating everything easily, but it takes forever, then I know that the issue there is that the game's not designed to support 14 players. And we can then look at how many people are telling us that. Because if it turns out most people play ThursdAGE in groups of 15, I'll be shocked, but there are things we could do about that. Then succinctly say what you see is the issue. So I and my 14 players were playing. It was only 2 rounds of a combat, but it took 17 hours for us to get through it. That's the issue. And then if there are any specific things that you noticed that caused that issue, right? If you're like, it turns out that everyone wants to take one turn and the last 4 players are just kicking a dead corpse. And that's what takes so long because we're making attack rolls and there's no target number listed for a corpse because he's not moving and we had to look up the rules. And if you have a suggestion to fix it at the very end, and I want to be very clear, don't apply house rules to a playtest because I need to know how the current rules are going. So don't say halfway through we changed this rule and it worked better, because then that first half of what you're doing is all that's useful to me at that point. Yeah. But if you do see a potential solution, maybe we just declare that you can automatically kick a dead horse, that beating a dead horse is a free action. We'll just say, okay, you took a major action, you beat the dead horse and you move on. By all means, suggest those to me. Those are things that we can look at and see if they work. And if a bunch of people have the same idea, they can come up. So these are things that are most important. What was the circumstance? What was the problem? And why was it a problem? And if you have a potential solution, by all means, pitch it.
I'm going to also lay another layer of that. Remove as much as you can. There are 2 things happening here. One is the thing that's happened factually, mechanically, and then there's the emotional thing that's happening.
Totally.
And so I want to hear both, but don't blend them. Let's talk about frustrations, but very specifically keep the information that you're sharing to just the facts, please. And primarily because I'll tell you, I've had an experience where I've over time have kind of built a callus over my soul. I'm dead inside is basically what I'm saying. And so when I get information that, includes a bunch of derogatory, exclamations of who my mother is, I sort of just immediately filter that out because I'm like, someone's really hurt here. And so I'm going to try to figure it out. But then, at one particular studio, I copied the text and sent it off to a developer. And that person came into my office and said, I'm quitting. I hate these people. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? Well, I didn't see it because I filter it out, but not everybody has that ability. And we got to remember that there's humans. So extract that emotional venom. And then let's talk about that, another time.
If part of the problem was that an emotion was evoked for you, by all means, feel free to tell us what that emotion was and how it was evoked. Your communication will do better if it is polite and succinct as the communication. So
yeah, devoid of anything. It doesn't have to be super nice or effusive. Just
yeah. If you tell us this event, if we had a critical hit chart that had gory descriptions, and we don't, so I can safely use this example. And you said that this description disgusted us all and made us sick to our stomach. That's obviously an emotional reaction, but it's something we need to know. That is different from saying, you such and so's made this bleeping bleep bleep table and we felt like you were destroying our childhood as a result.
Yeah.
That is a different way of presenting the same information. So I absolutely want to hear about the emotions that the game has caused in you. I just don't, as Troy says, it is better if you are not injecting those emotions into the form of communication.
And I would even go so far as to say expected. Here's the deal. There is room and there is opportunity for you to get recompense for the wrongdoing, but separate those two if you want to be a contributor. We can talk about those issues, and I'm talking very specifically about playtest feedback. I'm not suggesting that you travel the internet being passionless, but maybe do that too. But when it comes to feedback, there's a way that it becomes a perfect fit for the process, and that way is to extract that bile and that anger and that rage, and but then also know that there's another opportunity for us to chat and to connect. So 2 different types of feedback. One is accepted, the other one rejected. So, hey, Owen, we are 1 minute away from being done on Thursday.
Really?
Yeah,
Already?
can you believe it? I know, it's so much fun. I don't know what this means. Rain over at on the YouTube says, "Quick, we have 5 minutes to cast a revival on Troy." I don't know what that means, but I'm going to pretend to be offended. Owen, before we wrap up, do you have anything that you'd like to share or sort of let people know what's going on, or maybe you have like I don't know, like a personal Patreon or something cool?
I mean, I do have a personal Patreon.
Oh, you do?
I do. I absolutely do. You can go to my blog, owenkcstevens.com, and almost all my articles have a link to it.
Nice.
And today's article is system agnostic. Today's article is talking about world building through proverbs, so that you can expand the flavor and tone of a culture by what do they see as their truisms.
Oh.
You can also go straight to patreon.com/owenkcstevens and subscribe there.
What do they get?
And it is patreon.com/owenkcstevens.
But what do they get? Like, what are some of the other things that you?
The base level, you get anytime I do an article, you get a notice and it's put in there. Sometimes
Cool.
there are bonus articles. And then there are higher levels where you get things like PDFs of everything I wrote online last month that was given out for free, including things like relevant Twitter posts and Facebook posts. So if you've seen me tell bad jokes online, or I sometimes will say, hey, here's an idea for a superhero, whatever, just little snippets of stuff. I compile those for the higher level patrons.
Fun. And that really is a delight. That's some of my favorite internet content.
You can also just, if you want to, follow me on Twitter. That's twitter.com/Owen_Stevens. And of course, you can follow me on Facebook, which is, as you might expect, facebook.com/
Owen Casey Stevens. Yeah.
Well, OwenK.C.Stevens.
Aha. Well, I will let you know, folks. An internet search of Owen on Facebook get you there real fast as well. I want to thank everybody for watching, and I want to encourage you to reach out if you've got some interest in the Creators Alliance for, and the other thing too is just a little bit more information. The Creators Alliance is modern age, fantasy age, and maybe some other age-based products, but not The Expanse. So relax. But there, so it is definitely a multifaceted creators opportunity. So make sure you send the note in there. The other thing too is, in the coming weeks, I would love to work with Owen. We're gonna start bringing on some guests. Wouldn't you like a guest?
I'd love to have a guest.
Yeah, me too. So we're going to do that as well. And if there's some information you'd like us to cover, unfortunately, we've run out of time. So no, hey, Owen, stat this, but I had a doozy for you. We'll save it for next time. Hey, everyone, thank you again for, thank you for being fans. Thank you for people who are, for engaging with us. We have a lot of fun. And, it's by and large because you're so friggin' cool. Thanks again, and we will see. Oh, don't forget, next Monday, every single Monday we have Mutants and Masterminds Monday. That's at 2 p.m. Pacific here on all of the channels, and that's a lot of fun too. I hang out with Crystal Frazier and Steve Kenson, two of my favorite heroes. They're pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you, friends, and I think that's it, Owen.
Sounds good.
Owen, have a great day. Bye, everyone. Bye, bye.